how often is life ever perfectly balanced? It's a losing battle because you're naturally going to have these situations in life that come up. So to me, it's the wrong mindset.
Well, today on Dad Central, we're going to be talking about creating a weekly dad routine, time for work, faith, family, and yourself. And we're going to talk about, naming the constant feeling or talk about naming the constant feeling of being behind. Call out the lie. Oh my gosh. Balance means equal time everywhere. And then we're going to do a reframe. Integration and adaptability, beats rigid schedules. So we are back again on Dad Central, a parenting podcast to reduce stress and build confidence in fatherhood. And as always, our show is sponsored by Dove Men Plus Care. Dove Men Plus Care believes that care is the best of a man because when men care for themselves and others, there's a positive impact. So, Drew, what do you think about when we chat about this conversation piece?
I think how challenging it is, honestly. I'm a routine sort of structure person. It grounds me. It helps me feel more productive. Helps me know what to expect. And I just feel like I'm making more progress when I am able to stick to routines. I think the reality is as a dad, there's so much that comes at you that basically threatens or pushes out the ability to stay consistent to routine. Now, that could just be me. I've always, when I was younger, thought that, man, I need more discipline. I need more discipline. And I would say that could have been the case. But I also want to, I think, say the truth is there's a lot that comes at you and life is unpredictable. So rather than being so caught on the fact that you have to have, your routine has to be so perfect, I've learned to be a little bit more, I'd say, adaptable and flexible. And so hopefully we'll talk about some things that I've learned to at least help me in my mindset, but also to be able to be more disciplined and follow through on some of these routines and structures that add a lot of value to, at least have added a lot of value to my life.
Excellent. So a few things before we get into the conversation. First things first, have you subscribed to our show? If you're watching it on YouTube, have you hit the subscribe and the notification button? There's lots of people that watch us, but they don't subscribe and hit the notification button. Why not? We'd love you to. And also, if you're listening, please subscribe to this podcast on your favorite platform and also make comments. We want to hear. And also, we'd like to answer your questions about father during our shows. So feel free to email us at podcast@dadcentral.com. And what we're going to cover today, why most weekly plans fail dads. Also, from balance to integration. Drew loves that integration word and the balance word, so I'm looking forward to what he has to share about that. The 4-anchor weekly dad routine, practical weekly planning, and then what dads need to say no to. So let's start it off, Drew, with our first area. Why most weekly plans fail dads?
I think I'll start it even before that. I'm not sure that dads even have a weekly plan. So if you haven't ever planned out your week, there's a great article that Michael Hyatt, who used to be the CEO of Thomas Nelson Publishing, and he's now a leadership and productivity expert, and he's got his own company, Michael Hyatt and Company. Anyways, long story short, he has this essentially it's a time blocking structure that he calls the ideal week. And the premise behind it is that if you could have everything in your life the way that you wanted it and mapped out in your ideal week, what would that actually look like? And so he anyways, go to the article, read through that. I think there's so much power in it. I learned about it probably over 10 years ago, and I began trying to apply it in my life. And so that's the first thing, is that I don't know that most dads actually have an intentional plan for the week. If you don't, I encourage you to go there. But if you do have a plan, and why are they failing? Sometimes we overpack them. We think we can fit so much in. We're accustomed to achieving, doing a lot. Well, yeah, yeah, pack it in, pack it in. A good friend of mine, as he's grown and matured, he recognized he struggled to say no to things. And so that would literally push him to the edges in terms of his time and energy because he couldn't say no. So he's learned how to adjust that. Sometimes we have unrealistic energy assumption. This is me. I think I can do a lot and I've got a lot of energy. And then, sometimes I'm like, man, I'm actually kind of wiped out now and I don't have the energy, but you kind of push through. You do that consistently over time, recipe for burnout. The other thing is sometimes we treat every role that we have, work, home, whatever else, friend, as equally urgent every day. And it's not really the case usually. And then, or we have no margin for the inevitable when life hits, the unplanned, the unexpected, and you've got nothing left to be able to give to that because your time and energy has to go there because it's a crisis. So ultimately, those are some of the things that I think get in the way of dads. And, if we'll just summarize it, if you do have a plan and your plan doesn't account for either fatigue or unplanned situations, it's likely a fantasy and you'll never actually be able to achieve it.
Okay. Let's move on to our next area, from balance to integration. Break it down, man.
Me? Well, I want you to add some stuff in here too, Ed. So for me, the idea of balance, I think of, that scale that's on that single point, and, it's the teeter totter, right? So it's constantly kind of going back and forth. To me, what that mindset or visual depicts is how often is life ever perfectly balanced? I'm going to venture to say almost never. So if you're constantly trying to get there, it's a losing battle because you're naturally going to have these situations in life that come up. So to me, it's the wrong mindset. You're trying to get it to this sort of perfect place, but that's not that's not the reality. Whereas if you recognize and look at life as more of like you've got this whole pie, it's a 24-hour clock, whatever you want to say, and the reality is you have to integrate all the different elements of your life within that one pie. Well, how you divide the time up within that is totally up to you and those who are in your life in some respects, right? If you have a job that takes you to work and your working hours are 40 hours a week, well, there's 40 hours, but guess what? You've got all this other time that's yours to do as you wish. So, how do you integrate the most important elements of your life that matter the most within the time that is yours? Back to this, we talked about it in our last podcast, the circle of control. Well, this is one way you can do it. So to me, integration is being intentional with the time that you do have to maximize it based on your goals and what matters to you and your family, which is different than John beside you or Jerry over there or Chris, that you admire online, whatever it is. You build it based on yourself. Those are some of the thoughts that I have around it.
Yeah, I'll add on a Dad Central reframe, and here are some suggestions for everyone out there. Make some days lean work heavy, then make some days lean family heavy. And realize that faith and self care are anchors, not add ons. Really and truly have that faith and self care, make them foundational, not, oh, where am I going to add it on here? Those have to be foundational for you. So, really, really important that you have that foundation. Like when you're building a house, if there isn't a good foundation, what happens to the house? Don't have to answer that. So let's next talk about the 4 anchor weekly dad routine.
Yeah, so this is something that you can take and adapt. You can modify as you want, but at least it's something as a starting point. If you've got a plan, great. Maybe this will help deepen or simplify the plan you've got. So the 4 anchors are, well, be work or an occupation, whatever that might be. Uh, Anchor 2 is family. Anchor 3 are faith and spiritual practices, and Anchor 4 is yourself. So we'll walk through, and Ed and I will add some comments in each. But it's pretty straightforward, right? But here are some guidelines within each of these anchors to help you. So ultimately, work should have a defined beginning and end, right? You should know, okay, this is what time I'll be starting my work, and this is what time I'm going to end. And there needs to be the ability to leave work at work and go back into the other parts of your life. So that's kind of my thoughts on it. Ed, what are your thoughts on it?
Oh, well, just adding on to that, when is enough for the week? Like some people I know work 60, 70, 80 hours a week. That's more than enough. So define when you're going to stop. Really, let's put a boundary on how much you're going to do for the week and have one weekly work priority. But I really want to go back about probably Drew and myself know people that are workaholics, especially if you're a dad, father, a male caregiver. That just from my lens, that's not a good thing because you're not serving yourself well, and when it comes to your parenting, you may not be serving your family well. So that's where I want to add on in regards to anchor one. Drew, do you want to add anything before we move to anchor two?
No, I think I'll save what I'm going to share for a little bit later.
So anchor two is family, presence over quantity. Drew, what are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, presence I think is crucial. We've all, let's say we've been at work, we're in a meeting, but our mind's elsewhere. We're at the meeting, but we're not actually present. Same thing. We've been at home, and then we've been pinged. There's an email. There's something going on at work, and you're at home. You're sitting at the dinner table, but truthfully, your mind is on the problem that you got to find a solution for, or the something that's going on. And so, the important element here is when you are with your family, that you have completely removed other elements that are on your mind, so that you can be present with your family. And that doesn't have to be huge. Like if you need 10 minutes, or if you can give 10 minutes of undivided presence with your child a day, you're doing awesome. So that's doable. And so that is, to me, the most important thing when it comes to this anchor is make sure that you carve out presence with your family. And if you can, the ability to have one-on-one interaction is really valuable if doable, because it does beat this idea of like constantly coming in and out, or being there but not really fully being present. I think that if you have to default 10 minutes a day, undivided attention, put all notifications, phones, everything else, and drop the pressures that you're feeling to relate to, listen, understand, and empathize those with your family, you will be doing yourself a huge favor as far as them feeling like they matter to you, and feeling like you understand, and feeling like you're available to them. That's the big difference maker from my perspective.
Only thing I will add to that is if you're starting from ground zero, start small. Start small and build onto that. And if it's small and consistent, it will grow to other things. I always say it's the little things that grow into big things. So definitely small and repeatable connection points, and also small and repeatable one on time beats are really good. So the small and repeatable, if you can start with that, you're on your way. Let's talk about faith and spiritual practices for those who have those, and it's consistency over length. Drew, your thoughts on that?
So to me, the greatest value from this is peace of mind, right? There are so many um, I guess intrusions in our world today that can destroy our peace of mind. And if you look at the statistics, especially when you look at teen or young adults, or even just the overall mental health crisis, clearly we are struggling to have peace of mind. So if we want to have what I talked about before, presence with our family, or full presence at work where we're relied upon as well, or even be able to, as we talk about Anchor 4, take care of ourselves well, the greatest benefit is to engage in some form of faith and spiritual practice, because it can provide you with a deep sense of peace. And so for me, this doesn't mean that sell your possessions, you go over to Bhutan and enroll in a Buddhist monastery. That's not what I'm talking about. What I'm talking about is how can you find moments in your day to have some touch points around a faith or a spiritual practice that produces a lowered heart rate, a quieted mind, a sense of control and hope that you can make the things that you want to come about in your life. You can actually do it. You have a sense of agency, you have a sense of ownership, you have a sense of your belief. To me, that's tremendously powerful, not only for yourself, but also for those who you're in close relationship with, your family, because then they see you modeling something that is powerful and tangible and helps you show up in a way for them and with them that they can then take that up and become encouraged and hopeful and be able to move forward positively. So those are some of my thoughts, Ed, but I'm sure you can add to this too.
Yeah, I'll just add one little thing on top of it. If you can, also schedule during the week a longer reset. So one longer reset during the week. So certainly do have your daily touch points and daily moments. Like for myself, I make sure that I at least once a day have 15 minutes where I do absolutely nothing. No phones on, nothing on, and just quiet. Like when we get summer where we are, what I like to do is in the summertime, I will spend 15 minutes, go out on my veranda, just eat, no phones, no nothing, just have that peace, or even first thing in the morning. And I'm challenging myself, I think, in a way I may even go out for a morning walk, no matter what the weather is. We'll see about that. So let's go to anchor 4. Yourself, non-negotiable maintenance. Drew, where do you land on that?
Well, I mean, my undergraduate degree was kinesiology. I was involved in sport or athletics, and physical performance was always important. So I feel like, and I grew up with a family who engaged in naturopathic medicine, organic foods, and my mom always asked me, so after a performance, especially if it wasn't a great performance, so how did you sleep last night? So it was harping me on the value of sleep. So I feel like this one comes naturally to me in terms of like the physical. But what I've learned as I've aged is more about the mental, the emotional, and the spiritual, which we just talked a little bit about, and how important all of those elements to invest in and protect to my overall well-being. Unfortunately, the time when I learned this the most for the non, I'll say physical, more the spiritual, emotional was after my separation, and that was a very brutal time. And but I was forced to reevaluate, and I was also forced to push a lot of stresses that I didn't even realize I was carrying out of my life. I was on a stress leave. I had very limited access to my children, so I had a lot of time with not much, we'll say, to do. But what I learned was how much I needed that. So investing in yourself, sleep, exercise, quiet reflection, friendships, social interactions, learning a new skill, engaging in a hobby, all of those are so crucial for us because it's easy to lose yourself in the process of trying to be all things to all people, or to achieve a particular relentless goal that is so important to you, or to kind of be the family man that you want to be, without taking time to still connect to who you are and what matters to you, and things you fill you with joy or energy or fun. So I think this is a very important one if you want to um, run the fatherhood race as a marathon and make it to the end.
Yeah, I'll just add on to what Drew is sharing in this part of the conversation. The things he's sharing, treat it as leadership, not as indulgence. So be the best leader to yourself so you can be the best leader for your family and your kids. So take the better you can take care of yourself, the better you can take care of those others in your life. Let's talk about practical weekly planning.
Yeah. Well, I was given this gift a little while ago. It's the productivity planner, And the simple premise in it is essentially time blocking and time. Essentially, it's a budget for your time, as well as getting clear on priorities, right? And so you have to track your time. Like, so let's say you have a savings goal. What do you have to do? You have to track one, your income, your expenses, and then you have to track how much you're actually putting into investment, and you have to track the return on the money that you're putting in. Very intentional about that. But we have 24 hours a day that are given to every single person. It's all the same. But how do we use that time, and do we actually track what we're doing with it? Look, this is a discipline. I've done it in spurts, but I haven't been very consistent, and I want to get better. So this is me preaching to myself, not preaching to anyone else. So, but if there's value in understanding this, because when you do this well, it just like reaching a financial goal, you are actually going to help move yourself towards those other goals that are all, which financial could be included. So, simple breakdown for you. You want to choose one or two priorities. I say per role. So, one at work or two at work, one or two with your family, one or two in your faith and spiritual practice, or one or two in for yourself. And then you want to block realistically, right? Not optimistically. You say, okay, great. So priority one and two at work, this is going to require X amount of time, and you put a time in that week that is going to help you move towards that. And you do the same for every one of those four anchors we talked about. And so, family, we just talked through, you can do 10 minutes of uninterrupted one-on-one time. Let's say you've got two children, that's 20 minutes. If you give that to your child every day, or even aim for like 4 out of 7 days, wow, that's not that much time. You can actually do that. That's much more realistic. And then the other thing is, if you don't do this, you need to leave white space. You need to leave margin in your calendar, and you got to intentionally plan for that. Where are the openings, the windows in your week that you can block aside? This is open, right? Maybe something pushes me up, maybe work, I got a deadline and I got to spend a little extra time there, so I can reconfigure my week to balance out when and integrate all these different elements that sometimes come up. So I think those are some simple plans. So choose a priority or two per role. You want to block realistically, and then you want to leave some margin for when things inevitably hit. So,
Yeah.
simple question you can ask yourself to summarize this is, what actually fits your current season of life?
And then, Drew, our last point, what do dads need to say no to?
Yeah. Well, I mean, that's the question I would ask the dad who's listening. What do you need to say no to? What's the first thing that comes to mind? And whatever that is, it's time to start saying no. But some examples that we could share with you. Sometimes we overcommit our evenings, or this is the one I laugh at, but it's so true, is over scrolling, or sort of endless scrolling, right? You get caught in that cycle. You pop up some social media and you're like, oh, takes you down a rabbit hole. That is something that really, do you really need that? No. This is a big one too for many dads, saying yes out of guilt or internally created pressure, or just kind of a long held script that you're like, you can't say no. Well, look, no is like one of the most important words you need to learn to say, to protect, to establish a boundary and protect what matters to you. Or this is something I was doing a lot when I was younger, but I've learned, carrying responsibilities that aren't yours to carry. That's what dads need to say no to.
Excellent. Two things I'll add on that. First of all, every yes is a no to something else. So choose consciously. There, I got the word out finally. And then no is a complete sentence. No is a complete sentence. So, as we wrap up today, during our conversation, we talked about why most weekly plans fail dads. Also, we chatted about from balance to integration, then the four anchor weekly dad routine. Then we had what dads need to say no to. And then before that, we talked about practical weekly planning. So, key takeaways from today's conversation: you don't need a perfect week. And also, you need a repeatable week. And then routines create peace, not pressure. And also, planning must account for energy, not just time. Work, family, faith, and self all need intentional anchors. And then saying no is a leadership decision, not a failure. And then one other thing I'll add on to that, weekly routines work better than rigid schedules. So as we close up everything today, want to say as always, thank you for giving the most valuable thing, your time, to our conversation today. And as always, don't just manage your time, manage your energy. Remember to give yourself grace. And Drew, I forgot to ask, resource.
Yeah, our dad mentor community is a great way to help with this process or practice of becoming much more integrated in your life and learning to say no. I think the shared accountability and the stories of other dads, how they've been able to make these intentional shifts, is really transformational or can be transformational. So I'd encourage you, take a look at Dad Mentor. Our father leader community is a great support for you.
All right. Well, thanks everybody for giving your time to us, and we'll see you soon. Be well and keep the faith.